Well, more now on the Truth Commission developments today, and former Presidents Thabo Mbeki and Jacob Zuma both saying they're going to ask the judge chairing the Truth Commission Prosecutions Commission, Judge Sisi Khampepe, to recuse herself. The commission's investigating why people who were denied amnesty by the Truth Commission in the 1990s were not prosecuted for crimes they'd committed during apartheid. Families of people killed during that time have insisted on justice for their loved ones. Zaid Kimmie is the Executive Director of the Foundation for Human Rights, supporting the families of those who were killed. Zaid, good afternoon to you. We know that Mbeki really opposes the entire commission. Zuma's joining him in this application. Do you think they have a strong case here?
Well, as you pointed out before, the arguments will be heard by the commission on the 16th. I think the real takeaway is that this is an attempt to delay any meaningful inquiry into the non-prosecution of those TRC cases. If these, I think, were serious attempts at serious concerns about Judge Khampepe's suitability, they would have been raised at the time that she was appointed, more than 6 months ago. The fact that both parties, President Mbeki and President Zuma, waited until the end of December to raise these issues, I think is indicative of their approach to getting at the truth. And their approach is to delay and obfuscate as much as possible.
This issue has such a long history, and it's one of the enduring mysteries of democratic South Africa that these cases were not prosecuted. And I recall Vusi Pakoli's former NPA head himself, he has said under oath on affidavit, as I understand it, that he was instructed not to prosecute these cases. I mean, just on that argument alone, it would seem Mbeki in particular, he was present at the time, would have something to fear from this commission.
Yes, I think their actions indicate that they definitely have something to fear. I mean, the actions are reminiscent of President Zuma's approach to his corruption case. These are Stalingrad tactics. These are finding any means possible to delay any meaningful discussion and investigation about what happened. If it hadn't been Judge Khampepe, if it had been someone else, my sense is that these parties would have found something to raise, something by which to delay any meaningful investigation. This is not, I believe, a serious issue with Judge Khampepe. It is simply part of a string of tactics to delay for as long as possible, perhaps, in the hope that the delay is permanent and they never get to answer any meaningful questions about their conduct while they were in office.
Zaid, I'm going to ask you a question that I don't know if there is an answer to, but I've never been able to understand what would be the interest for Mbeki first and then Zuma when they became president to not have these prosecutions. They were the leaders of the ANC. It was largely the ANC's members, some of them quite prominent, who had been killed. These were people who fought in the struggle against apartheid, who had been killed by people who were then denied amnesty. And yet, it seems, certainly on Pakoli's version, that Mbeki in particular didn't want prosecutions. I've scratched my head all night about this.
I think that is the million-dollar question. That is the question that he should be asked and he should answer. Perhaps, and we don't want to get into the area of sort of random speculations, perhaps they had other reasons. Perhaps they felt that it was in the best interest of the country. Perhaps they felt they were good and legitimate reasons for the actions they took. But if they feel that way, they must explain it. If the reasons weren't good or legitimate, if they were self-interest or party interest, again, they must explain those reasons. I think, as I've said, this entire exercise is aimed at not answering any meaningful questions. And if it's not this, they will find something else. I think we're in for a legal charade, as people scratch about for any reason to delay the sort of investigation and inquiry. And I hope that in this case, Judge Khampepe will shut this down and we'll, if we're lucky, we'll make a start on asking those questions and having them answered.
I understand that, and I imagine the families certainly wish that. But Zaid, I'm sure you know as well as I do what they'll do then is they'll go to court and try it that way and then appeal that, and it could go on for another 2 years.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I mean, this is the uncomfortable truth we face, that where parties with resources can find spurious reasons to delay justice. I hope that there is some way that circus can be short-circuited, but I'm not hopeful. We'll see what happens on the 16th. But yeah, if past behavior is any prediction, this will not end with Judge Khampepe giving a ruling on behalf of the Commission. It's likely to only spur them on to further actions to delay justice.
So, in a way, the story is about the two people who've lodged this application, Zuma and Mbeki. But in fact, I suppose it's really about the families of those who were killed. And they've fought so many long battles, had to go to court, had to testify in court. We saw some moving testimony on this last year. This must cause them intense pain.
Yes, as you pointed out to start with, these were people who gave their lives for our democracy. They were, in the main, members of the ANC or other liberation movements. And the fact that those very parties that benefited from their sacrifice have refused to raise a finger to ensure justice for those families is very painful. And these further delays only add to the trauma. We've had 15 odd years of waiting, of questions, of attempts to start investigations, and we've had some success most recently. But for the majority of these families, nothing has been done. And I think the actions here speak to the callous nature in which these former political leaders treat the lives of those who sacrificed for our democracy.
The only argument I could see against going through all of this, Dr. Kimmie, would be to suggest that the people who actually committed these crimes, who were working for the apartheid government at the time and were denied amnesty, they're all elderly now. I think almost all of them are men. And some have already passed away. And on the one side, that denies justice for the families, it denies justice for the Cradock Four and so many others. I'm sure there'll be some people who will say, our democracy is developing, we should just leave it. What would you say to that argument?
I think this is exactly what we didn't fight for. We didn't fight for a system where, in an arbitrary fashion, people can decide some crimes are worth prosecuting and some are not. That's not the job of the prosecution service, is not to flip a coin and decide who gets prosecuted or to take instructions about who gets prosecuted. If that's the sort of system we're willing to live under, then we must be willing to accept the consequences of it. Next time round, with state capture, maybe everyone walks. And the next time after that, in the interests of progress or national unity, or whatever drivel people come up with. I think we all deserve a system where if you've committed a crime, it's investigated and a decision is made on the merits, whether you ought to be prosecuted or not based on political considerations, how connected you are, how important you are, or any other of those considerations. I think that's what we fought for when we fought against apartheid, and that's what we deserve. And anything less than that is simply not acceptable. And where people don't fulfill their constitutional obligations, what's on their job description, they should be held to account for that. That's what we need as a country. If we don't have that, we may as well all give up and, spend our time moaning the next time we see some miscarriage of justice, because no doubt this sort of thing will continue if people believe that these sorts of decisions, these political decisions, can be made with impunity. And we'd like to demonstrate in this case that that will not be the case.
Dr. Zaid Kimmie, thank you very much, sir. Do appreciate the important point. Executive Director at the Founder for Human Rights, supporting the families of those who were killed during the apartheid era, often by security police.